The evidence will prove that Kouri Richins murdered Eric for his money and to get a fresh start at life.
To this day, the medical examiner, the professional that's the head of declaring how people die in the state of Utah, has never been able to determine the manner of Eric Richins' death. The Richins family hired a private investigator, and they paid that investigator to spend every waking minute digging up as much dirt as he possibly could.
The case against Kouri Richins is starting to pick up steam. The defendant's housekeeper, an alleged drug supplier, returns to the stand this morning. So could possible missteps in the investigation be a problem for the state? We'll talk about it. Plus, the clock is still ticking in the search for Nancy Guthrie. The 84-year-old mother remains missing with no suspects in sight. This as investigators are preparing to release her home back to her family. And according to his defense team, Colin Gray will take the stand this morning. We're spotlighting the bad facts against the father of the alleged Appalachee high school shooter. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Friday morning to you and welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. TGIF, my friends, we made it. We got to the end of the work week and we're not stopping yet. We have a great show we put together for you. So let's get it started. Grab that cup of coffee or tea, whatever you're having this morning. It's time for my Opening Statement. It's outrageous. It's outrageous that a teenager with mental health difficulties and a proclivity for violence would be given a firearm. It is outrageous that he would be allowed to keep that firearm in his bedroom. It's outrageous that he would erect a shrine in his bedroom to mass murderer Nicholas Cruz. It's outrageous that he would be caught once before making online threats to shoot up his school, and there would be no consequences. And it's outrageous that he would be permitted to go to the gun range to practice shooting when he should have been in school. The facts of the trial of Father Colin Gray are outrageous. What I'm hearing from the witnesses and the surviving victims makes me mad. This was an obvious disaster waiting to happen. Red flags so glaring they couldn't be missed. That massacre at Appalachee High School was undoubtedly preventable. This morning, Father Colin Gray is supposed to take the stand in his own defense. I sure hope that somebody asks him the question, what did you think was going to happen, sir, after you gave your son that gun? What did you think he was going to do? Some good for society? Did you think it would look cute next to the mass murderer shrine in his bedroom? Did you think it would be no big deal if people got killed? This case infuriates me, my friends. Victims Christian Angulo, Mason Schermerhorn, Richard Aspinwall, and Christina Ermey should be alive today. May God bless and comfort their grieving families. And may justice in this case be served. That's my opening statement. Let me know if you like it. Right now, time for your daily docket.
Verdict in count 1A. We, the jury, find the above-named defendant guilty of the crime of murder in the first degree. Verdict count 1B is blank as required. Verdict count 2A, we, the jury, find the above-named defendant guilty of the crime of murder in the second degree. Special verdict form were Kevin West and Marcel West. Intimate partners, answer is yes.
In Washington, we've got sentencing set for defendant Kevin West this afternoon. The former fire battalion chief was found guilty last month of the murder of his wife, Marcy. Court's going to start up at 1 p.m. Eastern time. In Georgia, we've got defendant Colin Gray supposed to take the stand in his defense. As I mentioned, court starts early, 9 a.m. Eastern sharp. We'll have more on this case for you coming up later on this hour. And in Utah, we've got the state's case continuing against Kouri Richins. Testimony will resume a little later this morning. The jury set to be brought back around 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. And that is, of course, our top story for you. The Utah mother facing a jury for allegedly murdering her husband, Eric, by poisoning him with a fatal dose of fentanyl back in 2022. On Thursday, the state's case really started heating up as the family's housekeeper took the stand. This woman is also the same person who allegedly supplied Kouri Richins with the fentanyl. Let's take a look back at those key moments.
So we first perform a broad drug screen that looks for hundreds of different drugs. And then based on those results, if there's any positive findings, then we will perform a second confirmation test that's more specific and sensitive for that drug or drug class.
And in this case, what did you find in the confirmatory test?
Fentanyl and norfentanyl.
What is norfentanyl?
Norfentanyl is a metabolite of fentanyl, so it's inactive, it doesn't cause any effects, but it just shows that some fentanyl has been metabolized to norfentanyl.
Are you testifying pursuant to several grants of immunity?
Yes.
Do you understand that they require you, in order to avoid criminal exposure, they require you to testify today truthfully?
Yes.
Do they require you to testify today fully?
Yes.
Did Kouri Richins ever ask you to purchase for her illicit drugs?
Yes.
How many times?
4.
Did you purchase illicit drugs for her?
Yes.
How many times?
4.
Let's please begin with the first purchase of drugs for Kouri Richins. How did Kouri Richins approach you about purchasing drugs?
She reached out and asked if I could do her a favor, and I said, yeah, probably, what is it? And then she had called me and asked me if I could reach out to somebody for some pain meds for an investor that she knew.
Did Kouri Richins front you money for the drugs?
No, she did not. I had given Susan the money.
Okay, how much money?
$600.
What type of drug did you ask Susan Kohler for on Kouri Richins' behalf?
Just some kind of painkiller, an opiate.
What in return did Susan Kohler give you?
A couple hours later, she returned back to my house with an envelope full of pills. And then I had texted Kouri and told her that I had got some pills for her and asked her what she wanted me to do with them. Told me she would. It was late when Susan returned, so she showed up in my driveway the next morning.
Did you hand Kouri Richins the pills that next morning in your driveway?
Yes.
Did she give you any money for those pills?
Yes. She gave me back the $600 that I put up for them.
Let's talk about the second time that you purchased drugs for Kouri Richins. How did Kouri Richins approach you on that purchase?
She had reached out to me in text message and said that her investor needed or wanted something stronger. And I kind of told her, well, I can reach out to the people I don't know. You just can't say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. When you're buying drugs off the street, you pretty much purchase what you get.
Ms. Lauber, do you see there, it's blown up out of 3-3 where it says, text me, I got a question and won't do it on this?
Yes.
Did you send that message by Facebook to Ms. Cummings?
Yes. I was going to ask her if she knew anybody that had any pills. I had texted Kouri back and told her that I had a friend that could get them, but they were fentanyl pills.
How did Kouri Richins respond?
She said, okay, go ahead and get them.
Let me make sure I understand. Kouri Richins said she would leave you $1,000 at a small house in Midway.
Yes.
Did I tell you, it's getting good. All right, so Carmen Lauber, that woman who was the housekeeper and also the admitted drug dealer with Kouri Richins, is going to be back on the stand this morning. There's still more cross-examination to go, and the defense attorney who handled her cross really went at her hard. So what do you think the jury might be thinking? Do you think they believe her testimony that Kouri Richins was asking her to procure these drugs? Or do you think they think she's a liar, just doing what the state wants her to do. That's the defense narrative. Let's talk about it. Let's bring in our legal eagles now, our attorney guests this morning. So pleased to have Joe Tamburino and David Bruno on the show. Good morning to you both. Joe, I'll start with you. Your thoughts on what the jury might think of the housekeeper?
Well, I think overall they're probably going to believe her. You know, she does have a lot of problems. Obviously, she's number one, a person who could easily get fentanyl. The jury's going to consider that. I mean, that's crazy. Number two is she got a sweetheart deal. I mean, she's got immunity. She's going to get off drug charges. So she's got, you know, a good thing to play there. But in the end, cooperating witnesses are used in so many cases. Look at organized crime. You would never be able to get convictions on organized crime or big drug racketing operations unless you had cooperating witnesses. And many times those cooperating witnesses are not pure as the driven snow. They use drugs. They've had prior crimes. Overall, yes, I think the defense is doing a good job with Cross, but in the end, I think the jury's going to believe her.
I appreciate it, Joe. David Bruno, what's your thoughts? Same question. What do you think the jurors think?
I agree with Joe. I mean, look, standing alone, she would have problems, and the state would have problems if that's all they had. Because of the immunity deal, she was in trouble even before talking to police. She was on drug court. She submitted fraudulent community letters in support of drug court. She has prior inconsistent statements. I mean, the pile of cross-examination fodder just continues to grow. However, the state has very powerful motive evidence, and that is involving the insurance policies and how she procured and modified the insurance policies, as well as the grief book that was written after the murder and her debt and her affair. So the pile of motive evidence just helps to support the cooperating witness, and it also supports the toxicology.
Yes. You know, speaking of toxicology, the housekeeper told the jury that when she learned about Eric Richins' death, she reached out to Kouri and she said, please tell me those pills weren't for Eric. And she said that Kouri's response was that Eric had died from a brain aneurysm. So to me, that was one of those facts that I thought, okay, look, someone like this woman who's been a frequent flyer in the criminal justice system, she's got problems with addiction. She's a mess. She's a hot mess. And if you're the prosecution, you have to acknowledge that. But that doesn't mean that she's, you know, some kind of a pawn for the prosecution just being used as a mouthpiece when we have things like these statements, a check sent to her, lots of corroborating evidence. Joe, she was really getting beat up where we left off. You know, I'm sure you saw the cross. And tell me, you know, with a witness like that, do you think folks on the jury get it that, okay, this is not a perfect, you know, sweet little lamb? You know, like I say, you don't find the lamb in the pig pen, you know, but if you're not used to the criminal justice system, you might not realize that we use witnesses like that all the time. You know, you and David have been prosecutors, you know, all the time. That's the kind of witness you have. Joe, talk to me. What do you think? Do you think the prosecution has a problem here?
Not a real problem. I mean, I agree with what David said, too, because there's so much other evidence against her that if Carmen, if the witness was standing alone, yes, I think the defense would win the case. Her alone as a witness to make the case, you're not going to get it past the goal line. However, there's so much other evidence that is helping the state in this matter. So, yes, in this type of a business, you do have to use unsavory people. However, that last thing that you said, Julie, is quite true. When she called the defendant and said, please tell me those weren't the drugs that this guy died of, and she said, no, it was a heart attack or something like that. Because this witness knows that even if you do drugs, you sell drugs, you use drugs, whatever you do, you don't kill people. Because if someone dies, that's going to really up the penalties. Nobody wants to get involved in that. So, of course, she was concerned about it.
Yes, Joe Tamburino, I'm so glad you brought that up. Thank you for that. Let's continue. David, there are charges now in this day and age that were not always on the books for drug deliveries resulting in death. And I guarantee someone like her knew all about that and knew about the potential, you know, for a long prison sentence. Talk to me here about how the state can use her fear of going to prison as a way to explain some of the inconsistent statements.
Yeah, great point, Julie. In fact, she got immunity. I mean, she's getting a free pass here. And that's not always the case. I mean, oftentimes, even cooperating witnesses have to plead guilty to certain offenses and have exposure. So that's where the defense really has great cross-examination, because she initially didn't even bring up the fentanyl in the first statement. It was later that it was developed by prosecutors, and certainly as a distributor, there are now strict liability distributions that cause the death. So that was on the table. Her distributions were on the table. Her violations of drug court were on the table. And then just to get a free pass is certainly something that the jury is going to have to look at, because it is a benefit that she received.
Definitely great insights from you both. Dave, Joe, stick around. We're going to hit a break. When we come back, we'll talk about more of the possible holes in the case against Kouri Richins. And next on Opening Statements, we turn to the search in Arizona for Nancy Guthrie. No suspects, no persons of interest. Investigators, though, are preparing to hand the home back to the family. Plus,
he damaged a lot of things while he was there. Again, he was just, you could tell that he had a lot of anger and just yuck inside of him.
That's Mom talking about her kid. We heard from her already, but this morning we're set to hear from Dad. That's right. Defendant Colin Gray is set to testify in his own defense, and we're spotlighting the facts of this case. The case that's being brought against the father of the alleged Appalachee high school shooter.
This is the story of the Richins. Eric, a father of 3, met an untimely end, and Kouri, his widow, wrote a children's book on grief.
She's also charged now with his murder.
He was faced with betrayal and terror.
I know her innocence.
Is their story a tragic romance?
Or a twisted tale of grief?
The truth will come out.
The Grief Author Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Welcome back. Now for what's trending in true crime. Day 27 in the search for Nancy Guthrie. And authorities are saying that her daughter Savannah's last reward video has brought in hundreds of new tips.
Every hour and minute and second and every long night has been agony since then, of worrying about her and fearing for her and aching for her, and most of all, just missing her.
The biggest leads so far are the DNA evidence in the home and the footage of this masked perpetrator. However, the sheriff says that the DNA found at the scene contains genetic material from more than one person, making it difficult for a crime lab to analyze. So that's going to take some time. And time is something that Nancy Guthrie doesn't have. We know that she is supposedly without life-saving medication. And we wonder this morning, is there an end in sight? Where does the investigation go from here? Is there still hope? Let's bring in our investigative experts, Manuel Gomez and Mike Gould. Good morning to you both. Manuel, I'll start with you. Your thoughts, if there's still hope to bring Nancy Guthrie home?
Well, Julie, I say there's hope, but there is a problem that I have with the Pima County Sheriff. He's not utilizing one of the resources that are there, and that is the public has now started search parties and so forth, and he's disregarded them and more or less told them not to be involved, which is a huge mistake, Julie, because many cases have been solved with public search parties finding evidence which has helped law enforcement resolve those cases. The fact is, the Pima County Sheriff needs to organize this group, utilize them, and get them searching within a 3 to 5 mile radius. Because I still believe, unfortunately, at this time, since we're a month away, that she's possibly buried and they need to find the remains, or that there's evidence out there that can help find them. But you have to get these search parties out there, and they're not utilizing this valuable resource. Julie, abductions end only one of 3 ways. Either 1, you find a dead body. Either 2, you rescue a person, or 3, it becomes a cold case file. Julie, we're on the direction of it becoming a cold case file.
Yeah, Manuel, it gives me chills. I think you're right. I was wondering yesterday, I noted this in my opening statement. I know this is the biggest kidnapping case of our lifetimes that we're witnessing taking place right now in real time. But I wonder if we'll ever see it solved in our lifetimes, if we'll ever get those answers. Mike Gould, let me go to you on that question. Do you think?
Yeah, Julie, thanks for having me. So again, my analysis of this case has not changed since the very beginning because the facts haven't changed. So for investigators, they have to remove emotion, hope and prayer. As the saying goes, hope springs eternal. I would like nothing more for you to have breaking news and tell us that Nancy was found alive and well. But facts have to be reconciled with hope and prayer. And the facts from the very beginning never really, as you said in your opening, she was on life-sustaining medication, an 84-year-old woman. I don't think it's cold because we have 500 leads. The more leads that come in, that, by definition, the case is still active and they have to chase these things down. I predicted this thing was going to be resolved in a matter of days because the FBI director, the president of the United States were optimistic early on in the case. But 100% agree with Manuel. My criticism towards the sheriff, not the sheriff's deputies and the investigators and the FBI, but he has thrown more distractions into this case. It's really unbelievable to me. And I said this early on, and I got criticized by my fellow colleagues, actually, by making that assessment early on. He is not a public information officer. He's doing these one-off interviews. If he tells an interviewer, your guess is as good as mine, that just opens up all this conspiracy and speculation. So I'm optimistic this case is going to be solved. It's going to be a recovery, as Manuel said, and but it's going to be solved. It's just going to be time, which is more likely. These things shouldn't be resolved in a month. It's just we don't expect to be an elderly woman abducted from her home in the middle of the night in an affluent community with all the powers of the federal government investigating it. So that's, I was wrong myself predicting this would come to a conclusion in a week.
I really appreciate the insights, Lieutenant. Manuel, let me go back to you, please. Looking at the perp that we do see on that Ring camera footage, who we know for a fact at least one person was involved by seeing this guy. Based on what you've seen of him and what you know about the facts so far, Manuel, do you think this looks like a job done by some kind of a professional, or do you think this looks more like some kind of a hack who just happened to get lucky here and get away with this for so many days so far?
No, I don't believe this person is a professional. As I stated before in the past, I believe it's somebody that knows the Guthrie family, who is close and been observing the Guthrie's family. And I can prove that he's not a professional for the simple fact that he turns around, he grabs weeds, and he puts it towards the camera lens. No professional does something insanity like that, okay? But this guy was prepared. He did do his homework. That backpack was full. And there is no doubt in my mind that he had what I call a carry body bag. It's a bag where you lay it down, can roll body on top of it, it has straps, and you can pull it. We've used them in the military numerous times in combat situations, all right? Because this Nancy Guthrie lady, like I said, she was assaulted. She fought. She was bleeding profusely from the amount of blood, okay? This guy dragged her out. He did his homework. But was he a professional? No. But was it with somebody else? No doubt in my mind there was somebody in that car waiting.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Manuel. You know, you had told me that early on. It was really eye-opening for me and many of our viewers. Thank you. To reiterate, I was saying, do you think more than one person? You were saying, well, at least one more, because this poor elderly woman wouldn't have been able to walk any distance with this guy. So there had to have been somebody in that getaway car to get away that quickly. At least one, maybe more. Lieutenant, let me go to you. Let's talk about the dogs. You're a canine expert. Bringing in the dogs this morning, let's say they do. How helpful could that be in tracking the perp or finding beloved Nancy Guthrie?
Certainly very helpful in recovering evidence at this point, as you experienced yourself, the amazing abilities of dogs identifying microscopic odors. You've seen it. So, of course, I think they're going to contribute, hopefully, to the recovery efforts, the dogs. They're the only tool we have that can recover invisible odors. So, yeah, I wish they were there more often. And I think you'll see them as this thing dies down. They'll be instrumental in the recovery.
Yeah, we did see a couple days, but it wasn't an everyday thing, you know. And hopefully, as you said, they'll bring them back in. And it seems that the family is acknowledging that it's a very real possibility that she's deceased, and they just want that closure of having her home to celebrate her life. Always great insights from you both. Lieutenant Mike Gould, Private Investigator Manuel Gomez, thank you both kindly. We'll see you soon. Here's what's next here on Opening Statements for you, my friends.
I knew it when my little girl just texted me. She's in middle school. She said, we're in lockdown. I'm like, God, I'm like, please tell me, brother, please tell me. Why do you think that? Why would you think that? We're trying to get him into counseling. He just didn't fit in last year at high school, so we let him do online school. We brought him back into just doing normal school this year, and it was going okay.
We're spotlighting the bad facts that are stacking up against the father of the alleged Appalachee high school shooter. This as defendant Colin Gray is set to take the stand this morning in his own defense. Plus, in Utah, live testimony rolls on later this morning in the murder trial for Kouri Richins. But we're wondering, could some perceived missteps in the investigation become a problem for the state? We'll talk about it. Welcome back to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. This morning, our spotlight is on the accused Georgia school shooter Colt Gray, and evidence that shows that he was at a firing range when he should have been in class. Here are the photos that the state presented in the trial of Colt's dad, Colin Gray. They show Colt at the gun range with his sister in the middle of the day. His sister's face has been blurred. Now, Colin, the dad, is accused of supplying the semi-automatic rifle that Colt would allegedly use to murder 4 people at his school and injure several others. On Thursday, a prosecution witness testified that gun records show a gun found at Appalachee High School was in fact purchased by dad defendant Colin Gray.
What does this form tell us? And kind of explain it through the record there.
As an overall, it gives the what type of weapon it is, the model, the serial number, the type, the caliber, how many are being transferred on this particular date, and also the buyer's full name and address is also included, and then a signature and a date at the bottom of the page.
Okay, and then who bought this firearm and what was the date?
Colin Gray, the defendant, November 17th of 2023.
Okay. And then as far as the serial number, were you able to compare that to the serial number of the gun used in the Appalachee shooting?
I was.
Okay. And I'm going to show that. Okay. And is that picture that is displayed below there, is that one of the crime scene photos from Appalachee High School?
It is.
Okay. And what evidence number is that?
111.141.
Okay. And when you're looking at the serial number on the gun that was obtained from Appalachee, as well as the one from the financial transaction or the firearms transaction record, are they the same?
They are the same.
Oh boy. Okay, so they have proven that he bought that gun that his son allegedly used to carry out that massacre. And we expect Dad, defendant Colin Gray, to take the stand today and testify in his own defense. What do you think about that? How does he talk about what occurred? What kind of defense for his actions might he put forward? Let's talk about this. Joining me this morning, Tom Rawlings. He's a lawyer and the former director of the Georgia Division of Family and Children's Services, and retired lieutenant and canine expert Mike Gould. Tom, I'll begin with you, please. Your thoughts on this case overall, what you see as an expert in helping to keep children safe and the parenting that went on here, and then we'll get to this man's testimony in just a moment. But your thoughts at the facts, Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. It's good to be with you. Obviously, it's a horrible tragedy. I think one of the things that I look at in this case is it's very much like Ethan Crumbley's case. They're going after not only the young man who did this horrible, horrible act, but also the parents. And certainly the father seems to have done some foolish things here. But you also find out through this case just how many other opportunities there were to really intervene in this young man's chaotic life. His mother had a drug addiction issue, was out of the home. DFACS was involved with the family. The school had other issues with the young man. He really should have been in some sort of mental health treatment, but we all know that getting that sort of treatment is very difficult for families to do these days. And so I look at this case not only as a horrid shooting and a horrid tragedy, but also I think as the tale of many missed opportunities to intervene before we got to that tragic day at Appalachee.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you're so right, Tom. You're so right. Looking at this video, I mean, this is the video where he's coming on the bus with that rifle all wrapped up in cardboard, and he needs two hands to carry it. Lieutenant, I recognize hindsight is 20/20, but no one says anything to him. Nobody on the bus, nobody in the school. I have said it before, I'll say it again, unless it's science fair day, that's a problem. Somebody should talk to this kid. Lieutenant, your thoughts on awareness with our surroundings, what we can all learn from that video we just saw there.
Yeah, Julie. So I take a slightly different view. I actually have somewhat of an empathetic view on parents of teenagers that are either mentally disturbed or addiction, because we don't want to believe they are. These are called diseases of denial. And in our society, if you, as I always say, you can walk down 42nd Street in New York City and see all kinds of disturbing actions. People obviously mentally disturbed, but we just cross the street. We don't make a comment. We don't want to be that person that calls 911. You know, we hear, you see something, say something. So, and as you said, 20/20 hindsight, obviously the facts are correct. But I will tell you, most parents today do not know, teenagers do not really know what their teenagers are up to. It's not like they can visually see them because they're on social media and they get warped impressions of what. I have a grandson, highly functional, very well educated, but he still doesn't think men landed on the moon. So they get caught up in these conspiracy theories that are, to me, you know, kind of head scratches, but they're being fed this in the media. So to answer the question, I think the father, he didn't conspire to do this. He didn't encourage the kid to do it. I'm looking forward to his testimony. And again, of course, in hindsight, he's guilty of, and the parents are guilty of some level of negligence. But I think his testimony, if it's powerful, and he's just trying, he doesn't know, he wants to take his kid hunting. And so I'm taking that view, and I'm anxious to see his testimony.
Fair enough. You know, I respect you, Lieutenant, so certainly respect your opinion. I want to show you both another video here. This is Colt Gray, the kid, leaving second period with his backpack to go to the bathroom, so he says, but taking the big backpack with the big giant cardboard with it. We'll roll that video and we can talk over this. So let's look at him and study this. Tom Rawlings, you see him walking out with that backpack. Your thoughts as to whether something should have been done at this point in the school. Seeing how he's struggling, he couldn't even close the door without putting it down. I mean, that's how heavy this is and awkward. I mean, if you're going to the bathroom, what do you need your backpack for? Like, that's, I guess I'm just, you know, like, I'm
Yeah, Julie, I'm
gobsmacked.
Absolutely.
What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, absolutely, Julie. I mean, you know, the teacher's just kind of letting him wander around. He's got this huge thing sticking out of his backpack. You know, I think the question I have is this the sort of thing that kids at high school do on a regular basis? I haven't, you know, it's been a long time since I've been in high school, but I don't recall being allowed just to hop up and wander out of the room. Certainly not, and I'm not certain taking my backpack with me. I know that I kind of wonder if, given his history of issues at school, the teacher may have just been frustrated with and just didn't want to get involved again, because he had many other incidents where he either wasn't coming to school or when he was there, he was causing trouble, putting graffiti on the walls, drawing swastikas, that sort of thing. So you kind of have to wonder if maybe the teacher may have just thought, well, this is just what he does, and I just don't have time to manage this classroom and manage his behavior as well.
Yeah, it makes you wonder. I know hindsight's 20/20. Here's another video. Look at him walking off the bus with that big rifle covered in cardboard. Nobody else has cardboard. Nobody else is bringing, or poster board, whatever it is. I keep saying cardboard, same thing. Nobody else is bringing poster board to school. He's the only one. I'm of the opinion we are just in a society where everybody is so afraid to offend someone. Nobody wants to look up and live their life and think that maybe this little monster right here is a threat. It makes me sick. And Dad was seen crying pretty hard in the courtroom when they played the video of the shooting, because there were surveillance cameras in the school that captured the shooting. And Dad had a lot of tears. There he is. And we're about to see him get on the stand and share his story with us in just about 40 minutes from now. Great insight and conversation with you both, Mike Gould, Tom Rawlings. Thank you both so much. We're going to hit a break. When we come back, we're going to Utah, getting ready for more testimony in the case against defendant Kouri Richins. We're wondering, could some perceived missteps in the investigation be a problem for the state?
This is the story of the Richins. Eric, a father of 3, met an untimely end, and Kouri, his widow, wrote a children's book on grief.
She's also charged now with his murder.
He was faced with betrayal and terror.
I know her innocence.
Is their story a tragic romance?
Or a twisted tale of greed?
The truth will come out.
The Grief Author Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8/7 Central on Court TV.
Welcome back. Now to what's tipping the scales. Could possible, real or perceived missteps in the investigation be a problem for the state of Utah in the case against Kouri Richins? Well, on Thursday, we showed you how her defense attorney went on the offensive during the cross of the lead evidence technician. And on Thursday, defense counsel Catherine Nestor was back at it again.
Was there ever a time where you were conducting a search because the private investigator had revealed to law enforcement that there were items worthy of going back to the house for?
Yes.
How many times did that happen?
At least one that I recall.
All right, I want to talk about that one time. Does that involve the letter that was recovered from the bed?
Okay, there's 2.
Okay, 2 times. So tell me about the first one that you remembered.
I believe it was a voice recording or a recording device that was located.
And you all got information from a private investigator that had been in the scene on the house that he'd found something he thought you wanted to see.
Correct.
And so you issued a warrant and went and picked it up.
I did not issue the warrant, but somebody else did.
Of course. I'm sorry, that's inaccurate. A warrant was issued and
Correct.
You guys went in. All right, and the second time, what did that involve?
A letter that was located.
And the letter that was located in this search, and do you remember the date of the search? Want me to refresh your memory?
If you could, yes, please.
Sure, no worries. 11/7/24.
Okay.
Your purple day. It's your purple dot day. My understanding is a letter was recovered on the foot of the bed, of Eric's side of the bed.
Correct.
Now, the jury has seen multiple photos from that night where there's clearly no letter on that bed.
Correct.
And there were several, at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 searches prior to November of 24 where that letter was not seen on the bed, right?
Correct.
And that included walkthroughs of defense counsel, walkthroughs of prosecution team, you doing Matterport videos where there's no letter on the foot of the bed, right?
Correct.
And then when all of a sudden, when you guys get there in November, there's this letter on the bed.
Yes.
Right. And you took that into evidence.
Yes, we did.
Okay, so what do you think? Did the defense move the needle there with that cross? Are they making valid points? Let's bring in our legal eagles, see what they think. Joe Tamburino and David Bruno here this morning. David, I'll start with you. Your thoughts, please.
Valid points. I mean, the preservation of the scene and evidence for prosecutors is critical. I mean, me and my law partner, we used to be at the prosecutor's office, and we would take the whole house if we could, honestly, especially on a medical or a homicide. And the difference between them is often on the very minimal pieces of evidence that maybe could be found. So concerning, yes, there's cross on this point, but again, there's a strong case on motive that they have.
Joe, what do you think, please?
Well, yes, she moved the needle a little bit, but you know, the police have a good reason for all this, which is when they went to the scene on March 4th, 2022, they had no idea it was going to be something of a criminal nature. I mean, this was a guy who, for all intents and purposes, looked like he had some type of medical event. And that's the way they treated it. And that just happens in life. Police don't always know, and medics don't know, that when they go to a 911 call, it's going to be a murder or something like that. They treat the scene as it appears. Now, soon thereafter, and then you had the private investigator, of course, things changed. The conditions on the ground were different. So, yes, she moved the needle, but I don't think enough to really fully work to her benefit, because the police have a good reason why they didn't go full bore into an investigation.
Right, Joe. Yeah, hindsight's 2020. Nobody knew at that point that it was a fentanyl overdose. That took a lot of time with the toxicology reports to come back. So important, as you said, to bear that in mind. David Bruno, last question to you before we got to hit a quick break. Tell me, in terms of how the trial's going for Kouri Richins, what do you think?
State's doing their job. Again, you know, the motive evidence, they have the housekeeper evidence tying in the fentanyl and the book. I mean, she's going to have a very, very tough argument at the end, especially if she's going to go after, you know, the police didn't secure THC gummies or missed photographs of a bottle.
Yeah, I think Kouri Richins is having a tough time during this trial, hearing all this evidence. I think the state's got a solid case, at least from what I've seen so far. It's going to be good this morning when the housekeeper returns to the stand for more cross-examination. That was probably the most heated this trial has gotten so far. So we look forward to more of that around 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. David Bruno, we got to say goodbye and thank you to you. Joe Tamburino, you're coming with us for Court TV Live, and friends at home, we want you to do the same. We're going to be covering Kouri Richins' case, as well as the case in Georgia. And if you like today's show, watch it again. We put the episodes up for you every weekday morning. Just go to your favorite website, courttv.com, click on the shows tab.